whole purpose of this channel was to bring you books from around the world, and I want to talk to you about why reading from all across the world is so important. And there's a few books I want to use to actually exemplify that point. You can get these books from the description down below if you would like, but let's go right into it. The first book I want to bring to you is The True Story of RQ. The True Story of RQ is a very old Chinese book written in the 1920s, and you might be thinking, why do I need to read this book from 1920s China? But it actually really exemplifies the importance of reading from around the world and reading historically. The True Story of RQ is about a gentleman named RQ who is kind of a bystander during a revolution happening in a village in China, and he is supposed to represent basically the Chinese people, and everything around them is what is going on and what is happening to them, and all of the negative things that happened to the Chinese people at the time. It is important to note, in 1920s China, this is just post World War I. The Chinese people were extremely upset with their government and monarchy at the time because they accepted, or they were okay with, the Treaty of Versailles basically saying to China, unfortunately, you still have to remain under Japanese imperialism, and the monarchy in China were okay with that because it didn't impact them all that much. They still continued to live their lavish lives whilst the peasantry in China continued to suffer under Japanese occupation, and also were uneducated and weren't given much social mobility. This book is important because Lucian, the author, is one of the first people to write in vernacular Chinese. What is vernacular Chinese, you ask? Vernacular Chinese is Chinese written in a way that it sounds like. So the way you write the Chinese is the way that you speak it. And historically, Chinese was written differently. Scholarly Chinese, the way Chinese was written down, the way documents were recorded, wasn't actually the exact way you would speak the Chinese. So then it was harder for people who were literate and weren't educated to be able to read. Books like this completely changed that. And talking about the political intrigue, I want to talk about The Road to Mecca. This book isn't quite a fiction book, it's a memoir, it's an autobiography of Muhammad Asad. He was actually an Austro-Hungarian man born in modern-day Ukraine who became a Muslim and travelled all around the Middle East. And this is honestly one of the most unique travel autobiographical books I have ever read, and it was extremely interesting. Towards the end it gets a little bit repetitive, but throughout it, it is such a different experience because this is a man travelling around the Middle East in about, the interwar years, and talking about the politics of the time from an outside perspective, but not as a government official, a parliamentarian, where there is going to be this bias towards where he's from or towards actually trying to achieve something politically for himself. But it is one of the only books I have read where he is openly critical of the House of Saud, the current ruling family of Saudi Arabia. He is talking about his experience as a non-Arab, as a non-Gulf area man, travelling through the Middle East, or Southwest Asia as I prefer to call it, and it is so different, it is out there. He has such a unique perspective on the life of people in the peninsula. He has such a unique perspective of his understanding of Islam taught in a very rigid way and how actually it interacts with cultures and cultural ideas of the people he is meeting on the road. It's not like me reading a book from a British politician who was working in the Middle East and talking about these beastly people, as they would term them, and how they are heathens. This is a man who has obviously a different understanding to the people he's meeting, but because he is the individual, but because he is someone who is traveling and learning as he goes, he is so open-minded. It is such a unique read. My edition, slightly strange English. I think it's translated, but it uses old translations mixed with new translations, and it's kind of a mishmash of things. But that added to the experience of reading this book not from, the UK or the US, of someone going to the Middle East and talking about it from their perspective, but from a Central European man who then went and lived and worked in the Middle East, and getting his very unique perspective on the life and understanding life there. It gives you such a different perspective that you wouldn't probably get out of someone living in the West and going to the Middle East with certain goals and aims. And that's the beauty of reading from books from around the world, because you will understand and get the cultural version of a certain group or a certain individual, and you might not necessarily have to agree with it, but at the very least you kind of get the understanding of how that group of people work, or at least how someone in their specific circumstance in that area thinks. Talking about someone in a very specific circumstance from a very specific place, I'm coming back to the bane of my existence. We're bringing back PewDiePie. I want to talk about PewDiePie's favorite author. However, I want to talk about the sailor who fell from grace with the sea. This book has been the bane of my existence. I'll link why up above or in the description down below for you to watch as well. But this book is written by a fascist, a Japanese fascist, and it is still a book that, if you are willing to read it critically and actually do research about it, unlike me, unlike what I did when I first read the book, I think it's important to understand, because it helps you understand the mindset of people in Japan post-World War II. Not everyone, many people, many of Mishima's contemporaries condemned this book. Kawabata, who actually have a book on my shelf behind me by him, who I consider to talk about in this video as well. Kawabata himself condemned Mishima and his writings, and they were writing at a similar time. But Mishima's book is telling you, it is writing about the feelings of many right-wing Japanese people post-World War II. Mishima's book is condemning the move away from fascism. He positions our main character as someone who is influenced by fascism. You see the push and pull away from fascism, but ultimately what the book tells you, which is something I didn't get on my first read, and I had to read it again and actually do some research into it, which is what I recommend you do as well, before you pick up a book from an author you've never heard of. Something I really should have done myself. Mishima's main character condemns this move towards a more peaceful, loving, forward-thinking Japan. That's not actually what Japan is like anyway right now. And I think the reason it's not like that is because of people like Mishima, because they were still around post-World War II in Japan. Mishima calls for strength, masculinity, putting women in their place. Women have to be a specific way, love, kindness. None of that is what makes Japan strong or good, according to Mishima. And actually understanding that, reading those perspectives, can help you understand why places and things are like they are right now. We are seeing Japan electing a prime minister, or at least not electing, but choosing a prime minister who, they're a woman, which is being presented as, wow, the first women PM in Japan, and then you look at her politics, and then you're like, oh, that's not good. Thatcherite, pretty right-wing ideas when it comes to social things, not a great thing with Japan. And it's people like Mishima, people who got into politics with similar understandings of Mishima post-World War II, who are the reason why we still have that kind of politics in Japan, and why it's kind of scary and not great. But it's important to read these books because you get the understanding and the perspective, and if you, unlike me, and maybe unlike PewDiePie, to be honest, I don't know, I'll read critically, do the research into these authors. Even the other two I mentioned to you before as well, do research into them and their lives and their understanding, and you kind of can paint a picture of what these people are into and get an understanding of what certain groups and factions think around the world, and it helps you understand a country. You know, understanding the fact that people like Mishima were so prolific in Japan post-World War II has helped me to understand why Japan is still, in many instances, very conservative. That such famous writers in Japan, because Mishima was famous, even though he was condemned by other, you know, high-profile authors like Kawabata, the presence of people like Mishima helps understand the conservative nature of Japan. Kind of like how we have people like J.K. Rowling here in the UK, who bigoted as all hell, but is still in the public image here in the UK and is actually shaping our politics, and her presence as one of the greatest authors of all time, that's a whole other conversation we need to have, is helping her maintain the spotlight here in the UK and push a bigoted, backwards ideology throughout our country. And it's only going to get worse as people like her have a spotlight and are able to actually spread their ideas, just like Mishima being able to spread his ideas probably had a very negative impact on a lot of young men in Japan, and they passed that down to their children and their children's children, and it's the reason why there's such, it's one of, not the one of the reasons why there is widespread misogyny in places like Japan, even to this day. So reading from around the world is important. I tried to stick to books that were translated in this video, which is mostly books from Asia, particularly East Asia, that I've read. I've read a lot of books from diaspora out of other parts of the world, or they are authors from other parts of the world who actually wrote in English. Chibi is an example of that. So I wanted to stick to the translated books today. If you want me to actually go into more detail about books that were actually maybe either written in English first, but from outside of English-speaking countries, let me know in the comments down below. This channel is all about, or was meant to be all about, bringing you guys books from around the world. Obviously, that is still the case. I've obviously taken more of a turn away from just recommending you books and actually trying to give a meaning behind the videos. A lot of the time it's very political, and I don't apologize for that. That's kind of what I believe and I want to do, and the messages I want to spread are always going to be very political, very liberatory, and very left-wing. So if you want to continue being here, if you want to continue getting more of that, but also me focusing a little bit more on books from around the world going forward, do subscribe if you're not already. But if you are already a subscriber, thank you very much. If you are interested, you become a member. From as little as £1 a month, the members get a book club, they get a movie club, they get additional videos, so they get to shape the direction of this channel also. So you can become a member from as little as £1 a month by hitting that join button above, below, or on my channel directly. Thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments down below any translated books from around the world that you think people definitely should read, for good and bad reasons. You know, this Mishima book has really opened my mind to actually maybe I do need to read books from people who are diametrically opposed from me, so I can actually understand their ideology, or at least see how they spread it. Like, subscribe, share the video with a friend or family member, and hey, I hope you read a great book today.